So 28 for the second, 2025. 3 days of testing are in the books, and there are findings. In the first instance, we talked to Max Verstappen and the chaos going on over the balls that are red, conflicting reports at each and every single juncture. So too, we'll talk about Ferrari woes, a far cry from the behemoth that was the record-breaking Instagram post, 5 million likes, Lewis Hamilton, pinstripe. Now when the wheels meet the road, it feels like it's something different. McLaren too, it wasn't perfect, and so too we'll talk about Flexi-wing gate of the rear variety. Pierre Vacher accusing flat out 2 teams of potentially bending/breaking the rules yet again. Oh, the humanity. Let's talk about Red Bull in the first instance, because conflicting reports abound. Max Verstappen said as follows, and I quote, "I think we had a decent day on day 3. We had a few little problems, but overall we completed quite a bit of what we tried to do. I think it wasn't too bad, but at the same time there is still a lot of work to do." No kidding, Sherlock. From streaming all of the bloody 8 hours on day 3, it looks like they've got a quick car. It looked like they even had a quicker car earlier on day 1, when Max Verstappen went and put 2 tenths in sector 1 on a Lando Norris hot lap. Ergo, their car is quick but temperamental, even techie than techie things to drive. Testament to that fact is Liam Lawson's incident when he overloaded and nearly yeeted it into the barrier. In the hands of Max Verstappen though, with the umbrella heading of who's going to win 2025, potentially they're still in the running. Max Verstappen continues. Red Bull looks like they have issues. It was what I kind of expected. We just need to keep on working and trying to improve, he said. He continues, "I do not expect us to be fastest at all, but at the same time, it is very difficult to tell where everybody's pace is. There is some work for us to do." Oh, the humanity. Now listen, it's always testing, right? There are very little definitive conclusions to be drawn from the past 3 days by dint of changeable variables. What were the fuel loads? What were the programs? What were the setups? We don't know all of these things. Therefore, in looking at the times in absolute terms, we are comparing apples with oranges, and that's what Max Verstappen's alluding to. However, I don't think they were happy. Broadly, Red Bull distinctly less happy than they were on day 1. Here's what Pierre Vacher had to say. Deputy understudy even to one Adrian Newey, the last airbender. "The test," he said, "didn't go as smoothly as we expected and not as the team had hoped, but it's better to find problems here than later in the season." Propaganda settings, trying to spin us a yarn, is he not? He said, "That's exactly why we were here, to understand the car better. The weather wasn't on our side in the final session and wasn't really representative of this circuit, but we tried to explore the potential of the car and understand how it responds to different setups. I think we've largely achieved that." Oh, the humanity. What's Pierre Vacher talking about? Now, true, it was cold. True, also Max Verstappen did a cheeky spin. What are we talking about here then? I was expecting to see an RB21 on day 3 improve upon what we'd seen in day 1 and day 2, and they all took a backward step, RB21 included, by dint of the difficult climatic conditions, windy, warmer climbs all of a sudden in an afternoon session. Pierre Vacher continues, "I'm not as happy as I could be because the car didn't always respond the way we wanted it to." Again, table setting. It's important for us to remember that Red Bull last year, understeer settings and temperamental, a lack of drivability. It wasn't the downforce points in absolute terms that were the problem. It was Max Verstappen complaining about the understeer into low minimum speed, medium duration turns. Lest we forget Hungary, Max Verstappen said, "I'm on -5 brake bias and the thing still won't fudging turn." These are the travails beset on both sides of ground effect car. Snap oversteer and understeer on a Rascas or a chicane 1 at Monza as an example. This is the problem, the Rubik's Cube, as far as the automotive problem presented to these teams, each of the 10 that is ground effect cars. It's techie. Pierre Vacher continues. It might not be as we expected. That's something we need to work on for the first race, and further development continues. Go on then, check this out. Viaplay, Viaplay have a nice inside line to Max Verstappen normally. Max Verstappen always gives them a cheeky soundbite. Today, however, after day 3 of testing, according to Viaplay, Red Bull was shocked by the car having mid-corner understeer. Exactly the same thing that they suffered from last year. Showed signs of the same problems. It is indeed an evil twin sister of the RB20. They're working on the car in real time, reports say. The reporter of Viaplay assumed that Max isn't happy with the car because Max hasn't spoken to them today. Oh, the humanity. You get conflicting reports, and then you get the legend, friend of the channel, Dr. Obbs, who's very connected some people, notable ones, key personnel at Red Bull. Here's what he's tweeted. And again, this all under the umbrella heading of Christian Horner saying, you know what, we were always going to develop the car, and it was always going to be an evolution rather than a revolution, particularly on the bits that you can see. If indeed there is material change, a paradigm shift as far as the aerodynamic and mechanical situation, you will see that underneath the floor, underneath the front wing. That's what Horner said, and Pierre Vacher echoed those sentiments in a report of Racing News 365 a couple of weeks back. Dr. Obbs says, however, having talked, I presume, with his Red Bull Racing mates, no need to panic for Red Bull Racing fans. I heard some info around the mood of the team, and there is no cause for concern. Also, per many aficionados who suspected that Red Bull were going to come with a plethora of changes between now and round 1, so similar was the RB21 car to the RB20. In line with that, Dr. Obbs, very well connected to the guys and girls over at Red Bull Racing, says as follows. Also, the updated package was not fully deployed. Just certain components that they wanted to characterize. The rest is coming in Australia. Una, you're an absolute legend. Don't be daft. Do you hear me when I say that? We haven't seen the RB21 proper, not with all of its upgrades and updated components. That, says Dr. Obbs and his mates over at Red Bull Racing, will come as at round 1. Ferrari Rose. We saw all of the marketing, the legendary marketing, the photo, the 7 open windows, the 1 closed door. It was all Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is a shoo-in to do unprecedented things yet again. Mr. Unprecedented. We saw the Lululemon, that Lewis Hamilton was going to have this singularity of focus, that Charles Leclerc was in the gym and ready to go. Now all of a sudden for Ferrari, it's woes. They failed to focus on the all-important anti-dive, anti-squat. Only just now, 12 months after when they should have, they're using pull rod suspension settings at the front. They failed as far as reliability in day 3, final session afternoon. They packed up, started to dismantle the car with time still on the board. Reliability issues. Now the car looks quick, but is it quickest? Most F1 aficionados argue that they've taken a back step to who? The boys and girls over at the papaya-coloured team, McLaren, and their MCL 39 iteration. Now, if we're talking about McLaren, the key isn't just their speed. Remember, this isn't about downforce points in absolute terms. This now is about drivability as we enter 2025, the last year of this rule and reg set. Many aficionados, accredited journos who were there on the ground looking at how the cars are handling Turn 10 as an example, one of the most challenging at the Sakhir International Circuit, say what impressed them most about McLaren over the course of the 3 days is the ease with which they can access the upper echelons of speed. Therefore, it feels like they are not just quicker than the rest, anywhere between 1 and 2 tenths depending on the tyres, but the drivability is on a different level. Purple sectors you saw from Lando Norris today and yesterday even, he just bangs the purple sectors out, and that's techie for the rest. The bookmakers concur. They had Lando Norris as a favourite, but not a heavy one. 28.5% of the time they said Lando Norris would win the Drivers' Championship if indeed you won a simulation of 100 times. Now, however, after day 3 of testing, they give him 30% of the time pre-testing. Max Verstappen wins 26.6% of the time recurring. Now they've reduced Max Verstappen's odds from 26.6 to 25% flat. That's material, chat. That's got to count for something. Oh, and by the way, if we're talking cheating and trickery, testing, lest we forget, isn't even tested to see whether the components are legal, which is bonkers. But what else would you expect from the FIA at this juncture? Pierre Vacher, again, Adrian Newey's understudy, legend of the Bulls that are red, has come out and accused Mercedes and McLaren of cheating, of leveraging by dint of their rear wing things that they shouldn't be, lest we forget. Context here is key. Baku last year, nobody could argue with a straight face that OJ Piastri could have held off a fire-breathing dragon in modern-day journalism, aka Charles Leclerc, but for a cheeky flexi-wing at the front for sure, but then the mini DRS at the back. Lest we forget the Joker smile. The DRS was open when OJ Piastri wasn't even accessing DRS, and that's chaos. But that is F1, is it not? On the back of that, on the back of all of those accrued points for McLaren by dint of the mini DRS, so to the flexi-wing, the rules were amended, something to this effect. The slot gap width was adjusted from a minimum allowance of 10 to 15 millimeters to 9.4 to 30 millimeters, while still maintaining an uppermost limit of 85 millimeters while DRS was activated. How do you know that something was at play and it's not just Pierre Vacher talking? Well, you just look at the maximal velocity times in day 3 of testing. OJ Piastri, not super quick, but super quick through the speed trap. Second fastest indeed at 319 kilometers per hour. Per the race, on this trickery being deployed by Mercedes and McLaren, apparently paddock sources suggest that there are 2 key behaviour characteristics that have emerged. One of the entire rear wing structure rotating back, doing one of these, different to the mini DRS that OJ Piastri and McLaren leveraged last year at Baku as an example. So one of these, the whole of the rear wing disappearing, making the car therefore super slippery on the straights. That's what you would need. Jekyll and Hyde settings. Another of some squads continue to play around with the opening of the slot gap, mini DRS, Joker smile, exactly what OJ Piastri had last year at Baku. So too, speaking on the final day, Pierre Vacher had this to say: it's still going on. The trickery around the rear wing is still in play. You can see when you look at the onboard footage as far as Ferrari and McLaren are concerned. Pierre Vacher continues, I think Ferrari and McLaren are doing the mini DRS stuff still. Joker smile settings, OJ Piastri, Baku. Pierre Vacher continues, it is quite visible. Ergo, Red Bull are getting in front of this in the here and now, lest they want to repeat the mistakes of Christmas past and lose another championship of the constructors and or drivers variety at the altar of McLaren and Rob Marshall's genius by dint of flexi wings. How, ladies and gentlemen, do you like yourself some F1?